Hello and welcome. We have a special guest today. Luckily, we're able to be joined by Ramses Calderon, who's a foremost Barrios scholar in Canada, definitely, and quite possibly in the world. And this is part of the second annual Agustín Barrios tribute hosted by Casa Mais. And so, special thanks to Casa Mais. Ramses, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thanks so much, Erez and Casa Mais for inviting me again and be part of this fantastic project and paying homage to one of the most important Latin American guitarists and composers.
Well, we were able to collaborate last year on a great video, which was a pleasure to do. How did you get introduced to Barrios, and what is it about him and his music that really drew you in?
Well, I got first introduced to Barrios by literally by one of my teachers, one of Barrios' disciples. He started to talk to me about Barrios, you know, and his world, his relationship, and so on. At that time, of course, I didn't know actually much about it. I didn't know, you know, the relevance of his work. Never mind the legacy that he has left to the world, right? Despite that we used to live, you know, that my family back at the time when Barrios was around, we used to live around the corner from the Andrino brothers, were Barrios disciples, first Barrios disciples in El Salvador. So he was the one that introduced me first to Agustín Barrios, and I guess, you know, my relationship, despite the music that is such a beautiful and has definitely some Latin American connections, some Latin American taste, some Latin American roots, you know, something that is really part of this country, but this continent, but at the same time, it has some European style. So it's a very fantastic music.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was actually playing folk music, Latin America folk music, you know, like pan flutes, charango, ocarinas, definitely, you know, traditional music from Central America. And this was a very fascinated talking to him. But what really got me and intrigued me a lot, and I think that's one of the most important part that I learned from my teachers. Not only Barrios' way of teaching and learning the instrument and so on, right? But actually his way of being, you know, how he conduct himself, how he used to treat other ones. And when you listen to, in that case, my master talking about his teacher was something else, you know, with such a lot of love and passion and respect. You know, something that we miss a lot nowadays. You know, nowadays you have the structure of teacher-student, and then you come to the class and then you go on, right? You don't get the chance to have the interaction as a student disciple, so to speak. And, you know, like, you don't talk only about the music or the guitar or the technique itself belong to the instrument, but also, you know, let's talk about life itself, you know, let's talk about philosophy, about culture, about whatever else, you know. And I think that the part is missing, and that, to me, that was some very important element that added to my knowledge, but also to my attraction to Barrios.
Regarding his personality and his character and some of the things that we're talking about, there's maybe more of an oral record than there is like an actual historical record about who he was and, you know, where he traveled to, how he was as a person, things like that. Can you speak a little bit to the mythical character that is Barrios, and understanding what do we know for sure, and what are things that are part of more of the oral tradition?
Well, you know, for what we have managed to gather, we know that you know, I mean, he passed in 1944, so for what we have gathered at that time, beside, as you say, the oral tradition, what we had gathered in newspapers and people that met him at the time, you know, critics and the in magazines and so on. So just tell us a little bit, letters, for example. Letters is one of the most important things too, because the letters that he wrote to his friends, saying where he was at that moment, and explaining different things, just the same one. I think one very important letter is the one that he wrote about Andres Segovia when he first met Andres Segovia, and such a respect that he had for Andres Segovia. So he was, I think, along the way of his life, like pretty much all of us, we are changing, we are evolving, right?
Yeah.
And he was very well educated person. His parents, especially his dad, was a diplomat. What we have found in the school is like on the records that he spoke very well English, obviously Portuguese, Guarani, Spanish, and or Castilian, and had a basis of Latin.
Okay.
So he was very well knowledgeable, and in general cultures. He was the type of person that used to learn a lot. And, he used to say to my teachers, if you want to be a guitarist, you have to take a bath on the fountain of culture.
Right.
So meaning you don't just play the instrument as an instrument. You really have to dig into the culture itself of everything. Like global culture. In a way, really told about his way of thinking, about his way of being. And we all of us know that he was a theosophist, which given another way of the line of the spirituality of him.
It's hard to characterize someone who's an artist that's continually evolving, I think. If we look at Barrios today, at which period are we looking at him as, are we talking about Barrios as a young man? Are we talking about Barrios as the teacher later in his life? Or are we talking about Barrios as the bohemian artist that's traveling and giving concerts in all these different places, right? I think today there's still a sort of a legendary character, or like aura, that kind of surrounds him, and I think he had a part in cultivating that and trying to let people believe a certain story about him, who he was.
Well, I think there is definitely a lot of the stuff that it was betrayed, as such. But I like to base pretty much everything on the documents that we've been finding over the years, especially now that we've been collecting so many documents. And according to the critics, or according to the documents, it's actually telling something that this person was. I won't say. I mean, I will say the word, but it's like out of this world, so to speaking. With a particular type of magnetism, with a particular type of energy that attract easily. Very soft-spoken, quiet. He didn't like to talk too much. Very, very, very quiet, and definitely, like a very bohemian person who liked to, just play his instrument and go from one place to another one. Especially in those early years, we used to do the Gaucho Trail, in Uruguay, in Argentina. And that's the Gaucho is a totally a culture that is belong to the particular area, and and you can see it. Well, you can see some of the photograph when he's playing and the Gaucho is dancing and with the poncho and so on, right? So you can tell right away that that his inclination, despite his knowledge and his capabilities, it wasn't only as a classical musician, as a arranger, but also something that has actually belonged to Latin America, like to the richest culture that we have in the popular music, and that was him too,
Will his name be a household name?
Oh yeah, for sure. still, I think his music was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
At that time, it wasn't so much. At that time, it was very criticized about his style of music, right? So I think it was ahead of his time.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll come back with Ramses Calderon. And welcome back. We're here with Ramses Calderon, and we're discussing Agustín Barrios. I feel that Barrios he's someone who is definitively Latin American, and well, let's start with that. What does that mean exactly?
I think, it has many meanings, definitely, but in the context that I will address probably is the representation of a mestizo person, in his case, right? A mestizo person and as an indigenous person to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
As a Latin American artist, in this case, in North America, for example, for us or for me, in North America, it's even now. I mean, it's open it up, but even now you can see that it's a particular circle, that sometimes is hard to break, and sometimes people don't expect from Latin America some type of art, because we still have a very Eurocentric culture, so whatever comes from Europe is it is great, right?
Right.
In Latin America, I mean, it's so rich. It's so rich in every single country, within the country, in different areas. It's all kinds of different variants.
Yeah.
In that was make it so rich, so good for us.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Barrios was known for traveling quite a bit. I mean, I would ask you to name the countries that he visited, but I think it might be faster just to name the countries he didn't visit, especially in Latin America. So, can you talk a little bit about how he grew through his travels? He must have really been able to connect with all these different people in all these different places.
Yeah, for sure. It just came to my mind the first letter that a letter that he wrote to his mom
Okay.
when he was about to leave Paraguay, and he just saying that he was going to Argentina for a concert,
Okay.
next week, and he'll be back within a week. And that took like 10 years period, and and then you see the newspapers at that time, and like everyone is already talking about this fantastic guitarist, right? And he was still young. But something that happened at the time that it doesn't happen too much or too often today is the art critics. At that time, you have an art critics that someone go to see a concert immediately is the next day you already have in the newspaper. I mean, before you already have all kinds of publicity in the newspapers, and the day after you have an article, a critic, doing by some person that has experience on it.
Yeah.
So that particular thing, it has a tremendous impact on the artist,
Right.
because he was in Buenos Aires, but then in Rosario they already knew what was going on, for all the comments that about this musician, and that happened to everyone, like Andres Segovia was playing there, and sure enough, in the other city they knew already how fantastic he was, and so on, right? So that type, and then they say, okay, let's bring it here, and then
Right.
another thing that was pretty common at the time was exactly the managers,
Okay.
the managers that has a lot of influence. Segovia had like around 3 managers in his life, and at that time when Barrio was alive, he was one that was taking the monopoly in Europe and in the Americas. So Barrios eventually has his own manager too, right? So the newspapers, the articles on the newspaper, the critics, was basically the letter, to say this guy is good. We have to get this guy here, so to speak.
Okay.
And then he started to move to everyone else. And I guess like any a dream, like any musician would like, is actually to have their music to be here, and play and perform and travel. And something very interesting that happened is that most musicians at the time went to New York first, and then start to descend to Latin America. But Barrios did the opposite, right? From Latin America, it tried to come to the U.S., which never got into that particular country.
So how would you say that that his art benefited from that kind of reverse movement? Starting in Latin America, how did that affect his art?
Well, I think it did really affect it in many ways. One, because he actually never get the chance to set foot in the U.S. You know, I mean, U.S. the country in at that time, although Puerto Rico had it was already part of the U.S. and he went to Puerto Rico,
Okay.
but not to the U.S.
Yeah.
The crown, if we can say that, you know, at the time was your crown if you already play in, you know, in New York and Boston
Yeah.
and in those places, right? So I do believe that his music was affected,
Okay.
definitely at the time. Plus another musicians, like in this case Andres Segovia, who also was, you know, making sure that he was the only one, right, on that particular line.
Yeah.
But you know, despite that, I think you can see some various changes in his personality and in his identity and the way of dressing up himself, in taking a new role as a indigenous person of the Americas playing the guitar, you know, in such a way that was almost forbidden for a classical auditoriums, right?
Uh-huh. Do you think that that Barrios then was like he really pioneered being a Latin artist, or was that already something that was in motion, like a sort of, you know, a truly like a Latin American identity? Was that something that was already, you know, in like being formulated, or was he someone who maybe pioneered?
I think it happened both at the same time, because if we study the history in Latin America at that time, especially in the literatures, you know, you have so many writers and poets and intellectuals that were coming up front, you know. And we had to take in account that in the case of the guitar, who wasn't accepted yet an instrument, a serious instrument, an instrument for concert, but an instrument that actually was belonged just to play in parties, right? So that was a big challenge at the time, because literature was already an art that was very well defined as an intellectual art, as an important art, right? But in this case, the guitar, no, you know, was the violin fighting or gaining recognition, right?
Right. Right.
So that's a time period that was very very important, that even that of course Andres Segovia also had to struggle with.
Yeah.
Because of that particular, you know, like nowadays you are pretty good guitarist. I mean, nowadays it's so many guitarists.
Yeah.
So many guitarists, like it's unbelievable, you know, but the
Yeah.
road has already opened,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
This
I like how, like at that time, I think you could still be considered the best guitarist in the world. Nowadays, there's so many. It's kind of, it's not even really something you could claim, you know?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, there is is so much. However, see, there is a difference that I have noticed nowadays,
Okay.
especially talking about that in at that time period. At that time period, for example, we can analyze Miguel Jovet, you know, Barrios, Segovia, Maria Luisa Anido, Lalita Almiron, you know, and so on, right?
Uh-huh.
And nowadays, of course, you have ton of guitarists, right? But the way of playing, the way of performing, you know, you listen some of the music or some of the interpretation of that time, and right away it tells you something. It tells you feel that something is there, you know. Nowadays, I feel, in my opinion, my humble opinion,
Okay.
that is very mechanic.
Yeah.
You know, that you virtuosity means you have to be fast as you can, but with very little interpretation, with very little love, you know, to each note, you know. That not many people use vibratos anymore, you know, which is one of the elements that gives so much color to a piece, right? Of course, I can generalize, I cannot do that, but you know, I can see that that's one of the big differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think at that time as well, you have to think that Barrios was influenced by a lot of classical musicians that were or composers that were very romantic and evocative, right? And so they wrote these pieces that were just very, they would draw something out of you, right, emotionally, and that was a lot of his inspiration, as opposed to just saying, oh, I want to just be the fastest guitarist, or I just want to play, something cool. It's like, I want to be an artist through and through, and reflect some of those compositions that inspired him.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I'm also just maybe you can speak a little bit about Barrios during his travels. He performed in a lot of countries, especially in Latin America, but he also was inspired or influenced by those places that he traveled to musically. Can you speak a little bit about that? I'm sure that he was taking starting to write, say, Argentinian rhythms and Brazilian rhythms and things like that. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in that again, right? We go back at the what we talked before, the reach of our culture, and I think that's one of the main reason of Barrios music is so great, because it speak from the culture, it speak from the people, it speak from that particular area, right? In which was a fantastic move from him. I mean, of him to do that, because he could have perfectly just write on the classical canon style or romantic style and then stay in that particular. But to me, as a Latin American person, I think this is one of the great contributions, because wherever he went, he had that particular ability, to actually absorb immediately the atmosphere, the feeling of that country, and then plays and then compose something with that particular style.
Yeah. It's a great. I think it's a fantastic gift that allows performers and people who are studying his works to experience even just a taste of a different place, different time, different place, different way of life, and I think he was able to transmit some of that through his compositions.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't exactly like some of the rhythms, like talk about cueca chilena, for example, when you hear the traditional cueca chilena, it's very loud, very strong, tum tuku tum pak tuku tum pak tuku tum pak, and it's a dance, right? And Barrios put it in a little bit more subtle way, like how he did with the other ones. So you can see that his artistry, it wasn't just be able to pick something that was traditional from our people, but also to master it and put it in such a way with such a harmonies that it makes something very unique, very unique.
I think that a lot of his compositions too are still inspiring people today. Sometimes people will take it out of the classical guitar context and put it back into a sort of a popular context, I guess we could say.
Yeah, because I think, and I do believe Segovia at that time was it wasn't probably the right way to do it, but I think he was right at the moment to be able to put the guitar on a validated stage. I mean, and it wasn't only him, obviously. He was just saying that was him, the only one, but it wasn't many people. It was Barrios, it was Jovet. Even in the flamenco stages, you have a Savicas at the time, who was actually playing on bigger stages too, flamenco, right? So, but I think the guitar itself is an instrument that is so intimate, it's an instrument that is so belong to the soul, so to speaking, and belong to the people, we know that through history the guitar has survived because the people managed to keep it alive. When the time of the courts, in Europe decide to dump it and then take the clavichord, the clavecine, instead, so the guitar was totally down, and then but it was maintained by the people, in the folk traditions.
I think we'll take another break and we'll come back with some more discussion. And welcome back. We're here again with Ramses Calderon. And let's talk a little bit about how you became such an expert and what it is that you're working on right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't think, thanks so much, but I don't think I'm an expert to it. I just know a little bit, and that's it. But yeah, over the years, you managed to compile some material, right? So for Barrios' 75th anniversary of his passing, so we managed to publish 8 volumes of his music, starting at volume 1, his methodology, how he taught in El Salvador to my teachers. So we start down to write it down with one of my teachers, and then I start to collect with the rest, the disciples that were alive, in English version, and then like duets, his studies, arrangement of other composers, and then his whole composition, right? So there was stuff that was published before in English. Now I'm trying to publish. I want to publish this year the method, the Barrios method in a Spanish version, and we're working on his diary. Which is that's a lot of it's a lot of information. So it's a group of us that we're working together to be able to put it. Something like that.
And who are some of these people that have also contributed, or that because there must be a lot of Barrios scholars out there.
Yeah. Well, I really don't know many of them. I mean, as a Barrios scholar in that particular field, but the one that we're working, for example, as Federico Shepard, which is we already published with him last year. Richard Pinel, which is he wrote already a book about the guitar in Argentina, and so on. So we're working on that, but it will take a while. But I think it's coming. It's coming sometime. It's coming together. It's just a lot of work, but it's coming together pretty good.
So Barrios, during his time, I'm sure he was well known in certain circles, but I feel that his contribution wasn't really fully acknowledged until relatively recently. How did that come about?
Well, I think as I told before, his music was ahead of his time, and he didn't have that particular recognition, if we can say that. He was recognized as a great guitarist, a phenomenal guitarist. But his music, I mean, some people really like his music, but at the same time, the inclination was towards the music that was set at that particular time.
Yeah.
And he didn't live long enough, like other guitarists, like he passed in 1944, so he didn't get a chance to actually evolve through the television, for example, who was a big thing, a big boom, right?
Right.
When that particular state was start to develop in. So at that time, the entertainment was live. You go to the theaters, you listen to a concert, you see an opera. You see a theater going on, but it wasn't like we have it today, right? So that a big impact for sure.
Basically, the medium changed. The medium of entertainment kind of changed. So
Yeah.
all of these relics of his time. What happened to these, and what do we have? What's the record that we have left over?
Of his production.
Right.
Well, fortunately, some of his friends and patrons actually managed to keep a lot of his archives, a lot of his stuff, because he was the type of person that traveled a lot. So if he traveled a lot, he won't be carrying a big, suitcase, or full of manuscripts or or disc, that he managed to do some of the recordings. In fact, he was one of the first one who did some of the recordings back in 1919, 1920s. But he won't be carrying that. So he used to leave it in somewhere, and then just, and then hoping that one day the person is going to take care of it, right? And so on. So, and that's how I actually managed to survive. Like, his death in El Salvador became too prompt, and his students kept some of his music. He left some of the stuff in Uruguay. He left some of the stuff in Argentina. He left some of the stuff in Colombia. Some of the stuff was in Costa Rica. And some of the stuff that we haven't found, that we only know that he did some of the stuff there in those countries, but we haven't found some of the things, right? And it's very interesting that that some of these material have actually survived through wars, and that's amazing. Like how many things have happened in the arts, right? Like violence, like arts, like piece of visual arts, and so on, that has survived through the course of the years, despite all the unfortunate behavior of the humans.
Yeah. So now, can you talk a little bit about where you fit into this? Because thankfully, I know you contributed a lot to the video last year, and you contributed your archival materials, and yeah, tell us a little bit about the Ramses Calderon archives of Agustín Barrios.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was lucky and I would say honored enough that his disciples, my teachers, share with me the material that they had.
Could you just name some of those teachers?
Oh yeah, for sure. For example, Don Cándido Morales, Don Cecilio Orellana, who was one of the persons that actually gave me a lot of the manuscript that I have now in the archive. And he was Cecilio Orellana particularly was a very one of the iconic musicians in El Salvador. The Barrios itself used to call him maestro, because his musical knowledge was very, very, very sharp. So he kept a lot of the manuscript the Barrios gave him, including the part of the method, that he used to teach with, handwritten. So it was fantastic for me, anyways, because we managed to publish that. Don Victor Urrutia, of course, one of his youngest disciple, but he has so much to do after Barrios' death. He was the one in charge of actually arrange with Gloria the donation that Barrios, that his widow did to the museum in El Salvador, right?
Okay.
And then el Dr. Bracamonte, Dr. Bracamonte, pretty well known for his book. So this is the personality that actually gave me some of the Barrios materials. The Andrino brothers, of course. Yeah, and that's how I started actually to compile some of the Barrios music. But of course, before me there was already, most of the stuff was already gone. Like people already published a lot of the work. Jesus Benitez, Sila Godoy too, Richard Stover, and so on. So for some reason, some of the material, and especially talking about the educational material the Barrios used it to teach to his students, nobody compiled it, and I got and they were there, so they was given to me, and that's how I managed to put together what we have now part of the Libro de Oro, right?
Yeah.
And not only the music itself, but also programs, some letters, and things like that that talk about that particular time in his concerts, right? Newspapers, the manuscript itself. It is great. You can see them here. You can see that some of them. Some photos, especially in my wall, and it's great to see them. But it is belong to everyone. this is a patrimony that is, in my opinion, is world patrimony. Is for everyone. So what I want to do eventually is actually create a guitar museum here in Canada.
Oh, that would be nice.
And and all my archival can go there. Not only the Barrios, but the guitar archive that I have, music from the late 1700s. All the methods that were published at the time, the guitars and so on, right? So everyone can actually enjoy it and play it.
Mm-hmm. Actually, that's I think that ties into a really nice element of sort of the fusion, or bringing. We've been discussing, spending all this time talking about, Latin American culture and identity and musicians, but here we are in Canada, and it's actually a beautiful thing about music that we can access all of that cultural knowledge through music and bring it here, and now we're able to contribute to the culture here, that where we live in Canada.
Exactly, and that's I mean, that's one of the great things, because also Canada have give us the possibility and the opportunity, and it has the possibility to actually care for it, like look for it, the structural possibilities. Of course, it's a lot of work, and who knows how long it's gonna take, but the emotion is there. Like I always say, we come to this world and we just how we come, and then we die, and we don't take nothing with that. So the whole purpose is to actually be able to leave some of this, or whatever we can, for the future generations. So it's actually everyone can be part of this particular process and enjoy it. If I die right now, for example, which I hopefully I won't, I want to see my daughter grow for sure. But just metaphorically speaking, at least I my wife know, and people know that I have said this, that this belong to everyone, and we wanna that this archive it won't go to a private collection, because that's not the purpose of it.
Yeah. Well, it's great that we're able, through Barrios, to come together and have these types of collaborations, and we're hoping that we can have this a regular festival celebration of Barrios's life and work, and continue to bring people together in this way. So that was something that Casa Mais, which is a Latin American cultural center based in Toronto. So Casa Mais has been able to help out and be a part of it, and to meet you, and for us to collaborate, and all the other people that have been a part of this. I think it's just a great celebration. Do you have any other stories or anything that you'd like to share, or you'd like to end off with for the session?
Yeah, well, first, just thank you again for inviting me to be part of this fantastic program. You in Casa Mais. I think, I would like to share just some anecdote of Barrios that I think is very relevant about his personality, but also a great lesson for us, in the same thing that we just tied up to what I was just mentioning about the archive. One day in El Salvador, when he was living there, he went to the house of the Andrino brothers, which is he used to live there also for a short period of time. And then at the moment he asked to Rene Cortes Andrino, and he say, Che, he say, do you have any money with you right now? I say, I didn't bring nothing with me, and can you please give me something if you have? I say, yes, of course, maestro. Here is something. But he, Rene was intrigued why at that time, at night time already, Barrios was asking something, and his wife wasn't with him. And then Barrios, left, and he started to walk, and a few blocks after, there is a section in San Salvador that he used to call Jardín Infantil, and that was pretty much the limits of San Salvador, the great area of San Salvador. So the student Barrios, and then Rene followed him, and that was that anecdote was telling by Rene himself. So he started to follow him and say, "What's going on with the maestro?" You know, and as soon as he started to get to this place, you know, so some people who didn't have too many possibilities, you know, economical possibilities, and these kids just come up and then Barry, maestro, and just to hug him, you know, and people just start to gather, you know, and there he was, you know, giving some money to him, to the people, you know. But nobody knew about it, right? He just did it, and then he just took off, you know. So it's not something like, and that speaks a lot about his personality too, his way of seeing life, you know, like there is no other satisfaction that actually serve, you know, when you put yourself as for the benefit of the other ones, you know, to be able to serve someone in any way, you know. And like that is many anecdotes, you know, when he used to give his his suit to a person that was in the street. He didn't have it, but then he had to do a concert and didn't have a suit, you know. So you know, so that's something that is very important for me, anyways. That is part of those teachings that managed to wrap me up. That is beyond the guitar, beyond the music, or beyond the instrument. That is always and always gonna be, always will be there. Is the human first, you know, and how we relate to the creation, how we relate to the others, you know, and especially also the one that need the most, right?
Yeah, that's an important lesson for us to really carry forward. I think every day we see it's a challenge. Life can be a real struggle, and to be reminded of you know, the importance of generosity and compassion.
Indeed.
Man, that's yeah. Well, with that, we're gonna wrap up, and I'd like to say again, thank you very much for your time and all your knowledge, and hope to see you again.